For reasons unknown to gods and kings, the mid-2000s Nintendo consoles became home for a lot of low-effort or straight-up bizarre games. So today, we're going to shovel up gunk, licking the bottom of the barrel for the Nintendo DS. And what better way to begin than looking at a legendary title like Eminem's Kart Racer, a video game known for
approaching sound barrier!
No joke. That's it. It's known for that. The good old tin can telephone voice quality. Something that also represents the game itself. It's a wonder why or who decided taking it from the Wii and porting it over to the DS would be a stupendous idea, but that play was made while completely ruining what the Wii version stood for. Players' ears are not blessed with approaching sound barriers or perfect starts, undoubtedly knocking points off. How could you remove the one aspect players everywhere crave for? With that fact out of the way, we are simply playing what is essentially the same game you could play on the Wii, viewed through the lens of a person who sprayed themselves in the eyes with Windex. And if you can't tell from a visual alone, Eminem's Kart Racer is not a title in the Nintendo lexicon that is knocking socks off. It's not even loosening them for that matter. Those shits are staying snug. Unless holding A, driving on a track containing hardly functional weapons, listening to the roars of an engine from your chosen automobile is that enjoyable to you, your socks will remain intact. As much as I'd love to pretend I had a once-in-a-lifetime experience, similar to claiming the head of a living terror torturing his people, I didn't. My races were more of a slog of boredom, with a bit of irritation peppered on top due to how bizarre the turning is. For some odd reason, the camera itself doesn't shift until our turn is completed, which can be pretty frustrating when going through areas that are filled with tight bends, because you can't see the full angle. This is probably the only real bit of challenge contained within this marvelous racing game, thankfully, aside from how the people who made this thing clearly weren't sure what to do when making the AI challenging, so they casted this hocus-pocus difficulty spell of having your opponents randomly start moving faster than you, regardless of the kart you choose, that shockingly have differing stats. Your opponents inevitably start cutting through space and time, leaving you in the dust, and thanks to there being no drifting or anything to show real skill expression, you occasionally get stuck in these segments of hoping your fellow candy pieces crash into a wall so you can pass them. What a shame it is you aren't able to set them ablaze. It would be pretty hard to drive when you're melted and dead. However, you only need to place top 3 for your race to be considered a win, so if you really wanted to stomach Eminem's Kart Racer that badly, becoming the ultimate completionist, charity frauding your way to victory, top 3 is the move to make. It's a task that can be done with a little bit of time. For me, I made it to this farmland that shows why chemical bombs are a war crime, where my opponents had their carts go into overdrive and I couldn't conquer them anymore, or really I didn't want to conquer them anymore. Just like playing a Phoenix game, your attention span is where the real battle is. I know not everything in the universe is going to be a top tier anal penetrator video game like Mario Kart or Garfield Kart slaying it out day after day, but this is more than apparent to be one of those cases where the people making it clearly didn't understand how to make an engaging kart racer. They were just selling their probably $30-$40 sludge pie for the masses to enjoy. It's kind of sad to me how you're better off buying a real bag of M&Ms than buying this. And maybe that was the goal all along. If you purchased Eminem's Kart Racer, then that mentality spawned into your brain. They got your money twice. The capitalist mind control device wins again. Or if you don't want to purchase a bag of one of the most bland, boring candies in history, you could become a living sequel, being a product of the machine once more, copying a game like House. Fucking House. Why? The game begins showing a character who lives life pretending he's Harrison Ford. He then gets absolutely dominated by Mother Nature. Some scud muffin on the TV set starts recording it with the greatest smug-maxing moment in history. It's pretty scary how akin this situation is to real life. Stand there recording, don't do a goddamn thing, then pretend you are helping, and somehow turn the traumatic event happening to someone else all about you. After all this transpires, Goodwill Harry gets transported to a hospital bed, where the most profound doc right next to Hippocrates enters the room to save the day, tapping his touchscreen, feeling up the man's body, trying to figure out what's wrong. Once you're finished with your obligations, the rundown of questions begins, where we're then plunged into the classic hospital task of speaking to the other commoners, grabbing words, throwing them up to the top screen, slowly chipping away at the possible ailments our patient is suffering from. If you couldn't tell from this small bit of action, House the video game quickly enters the "is this even a game" territory. In between these whiteboard word-hurling Olympic Games moments, we get plenty of dialogue to aid in creating our rich narrative that will surely never be forgotten, and assuming you're reading it all, you spend more time doing that than actually playing, a word I use loosely. You can't lose the whiteboard segments, the words slowly fill automatically, so you're guaranteed to attain victory after a short time frame, and this sentiment can be said about a majority of the playthrough, honestly. As you continue playing, you're simply following straightforward instructions, tapping around on your touchscreen to perform certain actions like taking blood, or maybe you get to view some nasty herpes shits this guy has in his mouth. It all depends on what this unparalleled visual novel decides to whip in your face. I guess the goal was to make you feel like you're playing an episode of the show. Can't really argue with that. I don't think the world needed it or wanted it, but we have it. You're able to spend real life money on it. Back in 2010, I think you could have gotten a DVD of House. That probably would have sufficed and given you more entertainment than this thing ever could. Are there really House superfans out there getting tattoos of the show on their hoo-has, getting sopping wet over the thought of having House on the go? I'd imagine not, but the DS doesn't give a fuck about that. If you think an idea will work, just make it. It's going to get released. There's quite a few of these things on this console, the games that are barely games. A perfect example is Biggest Loser. You make your profile, putting in real details of your name, current weight, goal weight, and whatnot. I wasn't initially sure of what was coming, so I set it up as realistically as possible to see if the experience changed any. It didn't. All you discover is that you bought a cartridge that shows you a few exercises and recipes. I just can't help but struggle as to why anyone would ever buy this. DS releases were around $20 to $40 on average, so you'd be paying that for this. Would it not be better to just get a personal trainer so they could audibly motivate you, show you physically how to do the exercise and how to do them with proper form? Apparently not. Just get Biggest Loser. Crank up the volume, have crinkly ass Jillian Michaels and Bob Harper getting their sweat on as you sit there dancing along doing 3 sets of goofing off. There's another one of these pieces of underworld treasure that I discovered called Let's Pilates that is the same hogwash. Am I supposed to prop my DS up on a table and watch these figurines do their special moves as I emulate them? What was the thought process behind making these? With the Wii, it made sense there. You're required to hold the Wiimote while helicoptering your arm around or executing perfect electric wind god fists in your living room. You don't need the DS to do these techniques. The only bodily or mental help games that are understandable for this console are ones like Brain Age because you had to interact with it. You were performing the activities and needed the console in your hands. You're not just leaving Brain Age on a table to look at it. When there are purchasable games that make Deal or No Deal look like it has the most in-depth interactability since the invention of the telephone, there are issues no god or little green men could ever decipher. I'm not sure how many of these exist, presumably buckets do, that extend to even serious life issues with stuff like My Stop Smoking Coach, a cartridge that is doing its darndest to attempt helping you quit the cancer sticks, giving you the rundown of why smoking is bad, hurling analogies at you one by one, using these little pencil-drawn animated mini-games, where you're like spider rope heroing yourself into a cave, skirting around grabbing gems, you fall and hit your ass, then get told how this is what happens when you smoke, you inevitably trap yourself into a hole that you can't get out of. To be fair though, it does come off as if there was slight thought put into this. I'd say it's a step above Let's Pilates or Biggest Loser, and I'm genuinely curious if a person bought My Stop Smoking Coach and it actually made them stop smoking. A little part of me would never be able to believe it, but maybe it did happen. Still, that doesn't take away from how this is a purchasable game on the DS that's beyond questionable. Surely there were far superior outlets to assist with this quest over buying a DS game. I don't recall the DS being advertised as some sort of multi-tool like the Wii was. Whether it was or not, companies still felt the need to suplex these into customers' faces. The one I find the most fascinating that wasn't available to the public, yet it's somehow more of a game than half this shit, is the Japan McDonald's employee training cart that had people on an Easter egg hunt for a long ass time. It's available online now with English translation, where you are quite literally told how to do stuff at McDonald's. You make fries, the ice creams, how to put burgers together, there's quizzes. Something employees were given as a training tool has more going on than anything I've talked about up to this point that you had to buy. Leisure or torture? In this case, torture wins. People on the internet look fondly on this thing as a fun, relaxing time, surprisingly, but as an employee back then, I'm sure they were in the back room putting these burgers together on their DS, wanting to cannonball right into the grease pit. Regardless of that though, this cart actually had a purpose. It's far more rational than buying a DS game for losing weight, to stop smoking, or handle babies. I myself never browsed the dusty store shelves, spelunking into the DS section, grabbing Imagine Baby Z, a game where you spend a majority of your time dealing with an infant. And the best part about this baby is when you get sick of it, you can turn it off. Something you cannot do in the real world without getting substantial prison time. I really wanted to see what kind of trek the digital world was going to have me traverse with my young sailor. Unfortunately, I'm not playing this on a real DS, so I couldn't whirlwind into the microphone to cool this goop I'm expected to feed little Mikey here. So I had to pursue my other feminine life tasks with Imagine Fashion Designer, another good old grill game. In Imagine Fashion Designer, you do just that. You select models, pick random clothes, you hit finish, then get told if what you selected is right or wrong, requiring you to narrow it down, getting the correct pieces of clothing until you win. To move on to another task where you do much of the same, I really wish I could say I had a good time, but I honestly can't. Even when I tried to enjoy myself, giving a person a traffic cone ass shirt, I couldn't do it, forcing me to bend the rules in my own favor, concocting what I call the bacteria under a microscope shirt. I don't know, I could be out of the zone with this one. I feel like you could do a little bit more with these sorts of games. Maybe let us truly customize clothing designs, do some full-on makeup. We do have a touchscreen after all, we can draw. I'd like to transform people into freakish monsters, wearing Neanderthal attire, allowing my tribe to flourish, rather than me conforming to whatever junk you're expecting me to slap onto these people. Hopefully there's a fashion game across the 7 seas that would allow for this to happen, but as I've learned in the gaming trenches, effort and or actual brain usage is out of the question. A small part of my soul gets depressed when I see how many games on the DS have little to no substance at all, shaping a universe of lackluster chronicles where no person who walks this planet is able to delve into anything about them. Carnivores of gaming have nothing to sink their teeth into. These are just $30, $40 escapades worth single digits at best and get tedious after a handful of minutes. Your eyes are punished by looking at them. You then dive into the cart's crevice, seeing what's hidden within the plastic walls, hoping to find at least one nugget, inevitably returning to the surface with nothing, only to get shot by a harpoon, where it becomes debatable whether the feeling of being impaled by a harpoon is more enjoyable than what you just played. In some cases, it might be. If I had an elf bowling versus harpoon battle, I might actually take the harpoon head on. If you aren't privy to the immaculate elf bowling video game, it's one of the lowest rated games on Metacritic, sitting at a hearty 12, simply due to how straightforward of a tale elf bowling is. You load into the one alley you're given to roll balls at elves, finish your set, get your score that I believe is impossible to get perfect. On occasion, the elves will move out of the way, so even if you are a touch bowling master of the assholish variety, that fabled perfect game will not crop up, surely adding on to your fun. And that's the whole game, by the way. That's everything. You know, typically bowling is included in a package with other stuff, since there's no real longevity to it. All we're doing here is dragging our stylus on the screen, watching a ball move. But of course, when you congregate a squadron of thugs to make a game, these sorts of adventures will always be whipped together, hot on the plate for players to eat. However, this is not your traditional ragtag development team. These bandits wanted to be generous. Once your elastic, splastic, plastic, fantastic time is over with Elf Bowling 1, you can scurry your way over to Elf Bowling 2. That is playing shuffleboard, not bowling. You're pushing an elf down the lane, trying to get him to land in segmented areas, accruing those points, with your competition being against a reskinned Santa Claus named Dingle. Why not Krampus? He's ingrained in the Santa Claus lore, and it would have made more sense. Most likely too much thought to do that, though. A whole new character model would have needed to be created, and we can't have that. My favorite part about Elf Bowling is how, on the cover, they yank your chain, pretending the consumer is getting a bang for their buck, buying 2 games in one, when these were never sold separately. In reality, their tactic was copy-pasting this from the Game Boy Advance, plopping it onto the DS with the newly added touchscreen immersive experience. Honestly, if these warlords wanted to go down the ultimate scam route, they should have put both the Game Boy Advance and the DS version in one case, sending the player into an infinite stunlock, wondering why both versions are essentially the same, creating a memorable moment for gamers everywhere. If there's a standard for shovelware, I would presume it's this. Releases from companies like Phoenix Games or Data Design don't count in my eyes. What they did stems much deeper than being shovelware. Elf Bowling was a pump and dump game that only made its way to a few platforms. That's it. It wasn't a widespread virus that went around for a few years before being eradicated. The only other game that could compete with Elf Bowling when it comes to individual raw shovelware power has to be Chicken Shoot. It's one of those nutty buddy titles that has you drag a crosshair on your screen, shooting steroidal chickens soaring around, racking up points that you can use for bragging rights with your imaginary friends. The tall tale started on PC, then stemmed to Game Boy Advance, Wii, and of course the DS, all varying in the amount of levels contained in this wonderful piece of software. The Game Boy Advance version is undoubtedly the prime goop kingpin. You're dragging your crosshair around on 2 whole levels repeatedly, listening to the most stereotypical redneck hick guitar twang background music. But thankfully for crosshair dragging fans around the globe, the DS version is shooting chickens on a few extra backdrops in comparison. So, you know, that's fun. It never ceases to amaze me how this stuff at one point was sold for actual money. There's literally nothing to this. Did anyone ever have fun playing Chicken Shoot? Is it possible? Did someone get it and truly believe they acquired a real-life star pickup? There's no way. It's like getting a Garfield video game, except for Garfield Kart. Obviously, that's one of the best video games ever made. That's the only exception. The others, I mean, come on. When Garfield gets real, steps up to the plate, you know you're opening the door to darkness. I didn't have many expectations when it came to my gaming expedition this deep into the trudge, but are we really sitting here shuffling back and forth, collecting 30 books that are propelled by God knows what? There's no tornado going by or Beyblade ripping through, so I'm not sure what's making this transpire. More curious, I'd love to know why we can't fully control our movement. Garfield moves all on his own after pressing left or right. It's a very strange decision to make. Still, you can stomach it on levels where you're walking left and right grabbing items. Where it shouldn't be a thing is when the game is expecting you to platform. This is probably one of the worst platforming levels I have ever played in my whole life. I cannot stress how irritating it was. You're walking through trying to avoid these swings that have hitboxes that are much larger than the object itself. And when you get hit by one, you can see Garfield standing back up while skyrocketing in the air, by the way. You need to conquer these hazards until you reach these big boy swings, I guess you could call them. Once you reach this part, you need to position yourself correctly, because if you move too far forward, you can fuck yourself, thanks to us not having the ability to move backwards or control ourselves during a jump. If you happen to mess this up, you go all the way back to the beginning of the level, shockingly not being the worst part of it. What takes the cake is how these swings can be mistimed, making it impossible to win. You aren't able to control the speed you're moving while swinging, so if the timing is off, there's nothing you can do about it. When I initially reached this spot, I was completely bewildered, thinking the game was climbing Mount Everest naked, expecting to come out alive after. So I ended it all, restarted the level, reaching this segment again, where the first 3 swings were timed properly, so those jumps were possible, then the 4th one wasn't, forcing me to jump off and kill myself for a second time, for my 3rd attempt to be the Willy Wonka golden ass ticket, allowing me to continue trudging on my painfully slow path. No joke, with how slow Garfield moves, this level takes so long to finish, but you need to pay attention, stapling your eyes open, continuously reminding yourself you need to start all over if you get hit by anything. If I had to guess why a few levels in this game are set up to be obnoxiously long, it's presumably due to how short the game is. There's only 7 levels. The short length overall is usually why games like Garfield Gets Real have their rectums stretched open, making levels a lot longer than they should be. Not making much sense to me, it usually sacrifices any and all enjoyment a player would have, if it even existed in the first place. Realistically, would anyone want to sit here snagging 40 pieces of food at this dementia-riddled brain pace where if you get hit 3 times, you're donezo and need to start over? Pouring more Mentos into the Diet Coke, these levels also have random dancing segments that add absolutely nothing. You draw on the bottom screen to make Garfield do moves. I didn't know how to do any of them, which became a problem when I stumbled into level 6, where the entire level is about pulling them off, and frankly, I didn't care to figure any of them out. The DS is supposed to be where kids can be a kid. I'm not feeling like a kid. I'm just getting upset. But the one thing that can fix this negative mentality is entering a Chuck E. Cheese, either in real life or digitally. In my case, I did it through Chuck E. Cheese Playhouse, and I have to say, it was a blessing to enter the kingdom, being nothing more than one of Charles's aunts partaking in his reindeer games. Like tapping on the bottom screen, playing with a couple of instruments while Chuck is trying to summon a demon on the top screen. This exhilarating minigame unsurprisingly took the brain power of inhaling. As with the rest held in Chuck's domain, we're decorating a room, tapping the screen to match pictures, we go bowling, proving how fucking pathetic elf bowling is. When a Chuck E. Cheese game is melting all your skin off, turning you to bone with quality, that speaks more volumes than anything ever could. Or maybe it's not too much of an eye-opener. If you've seen Chuck recently, after all the mewing he's done, him and his friends have become completely different entities. If I had to pick my personal favorite out of the 10 time wasters stuck into the Playhouse, it has to be the coloring book, letting me finally bring CharlesCheese.exe to life. Now, I know it may be hard to believe we breezed through a Chuck E. Cheese video game release that quickly. These games are purely designed for someone's enjoyment, obviously, and have nothing to do with trying to con a few Hamiltons out of a family, from a kid saying, "Mommy, mommy, please buy me the Chuck E. Cheese game, or I'm going to burn the house down." It has nothing to do with that. It's all passion and soul. So I'll leave it up to you to experience for yourself the hours of fun contained within. I just wanted to spread my wings and leave the nest trying out another party game like Crash Boom Bang, an oddball in the Crash Bandicoot franchise. Crash Bash was the initial stepping stone with the whole Crash party game bonanza, obviously trying to emulate Mario Party. There was a lot of pee-pee measuring going on with Crash to Mario in the 90s, where Crash did win the kart racer battle. It did not win the party game battle though. So it's interesting to me that Crash Boom Bang was first to the punch when releasing a handheld party game between the two, predating Mario Party DS by around a year, meaning it's absolutely going to destroy it, right? You get your foot out the door first. Mario Party is for babies. Crash Party games are for grown-ups. Neither can stand against Chuck E. Cheese Playhouse, so it can easily acquire its righteous second place trophy. Well, when you turn your console on, going neck deep into Crash Boom Bang, starting your adventure, you'll immediately be informed of the new radical feature that was stuck in here, where you're able to get your grubby mitts, or in my case, paws, on items to cast during your playthrough to help yourself out or frick your opponents over, which is a nice change of pace for these sorts of games, I guess. From my experience, You don't really need to use them. I didn't notice any tangible differences. I kind of forgot they were a thing after a short time. Besides, I was more focused on the minigames. That's what I'd say is the carrot on a stick for almost any player, and honestly, a lot of them felt hit or miss. Like, why is one of our minigames tapping boxes, then tapping the other side of the screen to wheel them over? I had to play this minigame probably 10 times in the second level, by the way. For whatever reason, each level you play during the adventure only has 2 to 3 minigames each, making you play the same ones repeatedly. So you better believe this one right here is a gaming meal of the ages, crafted in the circles of hell, then cooled down by the semen of angels, blessing us with the power of both worlds. We got this other one where you need to pick a hole, attempting to predict where a pinball will land. We guess silhouettes that are way too obvious. Then we have other minigames that are alright. There was a solid one that I wasn't able to play, having you blow into the DS's microphone to keep a feather afloat. I'd love to know what an onlooker would be thinking if they saw you playing this in public. The most graphically impressive one was this plane minigame, but the controls were horrendous because you need to double tap the center of the screen to shoot and single tap on the left or right to turn, and considering how fast you're moving, landing hits is pretty challenging. The singular time I was able to play it, everyone just ended up doing aerial burnouts until the time ran out. Of course, opinions will be different to what makes a good minigame in a party title. For me, I just felt a lot of these were incredibly bare bones. I actually decided to give Mario Party DS a whirl, seeing what treasures could be scooped up over there in comparison. And the games were a lot more interactive, more brain gunk was required to complete them for the most part. It also helps that you don't need to repeatedly play the same 3 minigames over and over and over. You are blessed with different sights and sounds to aid in keeping your playthrough engaging. But more importantly than all that, the pacing in Mario Party DS was so much faster. Crash Boom Bang moves at the pace of a Phoenix Games employee's brain, which is honestly more problematic than the minigames being mediocre at best. You need to spend so much time drooling on yourself, waiting for turns to end, waiting for items to be used by opponents, or even sitting in a menu for AI to be finished playing a game. Is that necessary? These guys are hackers. Give them a number and get on with it. Trying to grind the adventure mode becomes a genuine slog after a short time, and I was slowly reaching my boiling point, so I quit out, hoping to give all the minigames a go. But you can't. There's no minigame extravaganza mode. You are forced to saunter through the adventure to try them all, which makes me pretty jealous of a bubonic plague victim. I wish I was joking when I said this. Level 2 took me almost 45 minutes to beat. It's disgusting how many times I needed to spelunk through the same few minigames or sit there waiting, allowing me to move on to level 3, where I was given a new set of 3 minigames, repeating that process. So with all that said, with all the problems laid out of brainlet, tedious gameplay, subpar minigames, I still believe Crash Boom Bang is the superior big hoss out of everything today. Even with every little issue it has, it was still a breath of fresh air in comparison to the rest. I've been told previously Crash Boom Bang is one of the worst games your eyes will ever graze. It's sewage muck beyond anyone's comprehension, yet I found like 10 games that are far below it. When you Michael Phelps your way through the slums, chopping these mud waters at unseen speeds, uncovering games that make Crash Boom Bang look as if you're leaving the LA air pollution bubble to inhale real freshness instead of chemicals and smog is beyond easy. The Walk of Torment truly starts opening your mind on what real bad games actually are. I'm not saying Crash Boom Bang is a god among video games or anything. It's still beneath almost anything else. But at the very least, there's a slight amount of substance to it, there's a semblance of effort put in, and this is a no-brainer choice compared to any other title found in the slums. As always, make sure to give your thoughts on these games. I'm curious to hear what you all have to say about them. If you believe Eminem's Kart Racer needs to be remastered, be sure to leave a comment down below. Big ups to all of our channel members who go above and beyond to support the channel even further. If you want to join them, be sure to hit the join button right next to the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, take very good care of yourselves, and I hope to see you all again in the next video.